Hello there, friends, and welcome back to my coverage of the Steam October NextFest, where I'm taking a look at quite a number of Metroidvania demos. This is Arcane Assembly, and my initial impressions are as follows. The music's really nice. The graphics have got a very particular but quite zoomed in style that I'm hoping actually isn't part of the actual game. And there doesn't seem to be any controller support whatsoever. So let's Demajen tries. Let's see whether it is mouse and keyboard only for a reason. A long time ago, there was a wizard named Almar who lived in a village on the edge of Mir, a strange land full of magic. Protected the village from the dark forces that lived in Mir. He would often travel into the depths of Mir to learn its secrets. Thank you for giving me a press thing to continue. One day, Almar decided it was time to teach his daughter Sadie the basics of magic, so that she might one day carry on his legacy. The first rule of magic is this: knowledge is power. Thank you, Khadgar. With each piece of knowledge gained, the power of a wizard grows. Are you going to teach me how to fly? Let's start with the basics. Yes, so that's why it's mouse and keyboard only, because all of the prompts are in mouse and keyboard. Okay, we've got a nice little bit of squash and stretch on landing. Our cursor is an actual... Is this picking it up? Yes, it is. Good job, I checked that. Our mouse cursor is also a targeting reticule, so I imagine that this has got shooter elements to it. Space. Boing. We have a double jump. Looks like the bottom of that platform is cut off. Could do with a graphic there. That's a nice flask graphic. Press control to heal. You have a limited number of flasks. Restore flask by resting. Don't need to. Scroll. That scroll looked at a completely different resolution to the actual pixel art elsewhere. All mages wear a magic-infused orb around their necks. In spells, it's referred to as self. Okay. Can't press E to get rid of this one. Open your spellbook and click Create New to start a new spell. Okay, I click on it. The language of magic is known as Arcane Assembly, thus the title of the game. The game, incidentally, the game executable is called Coding Magic Game, which I think is quite cool. Sorcery is about manipulating fragments of magical energy known as orbs using magic. Each instruction and spell is executed sequentially from top to bottom, starting with the start block. The most basic operation in the language is creating an orb and setting a variable to it. This sounds oddly complicated. I wonder how deep into the idea of magic as a coding language they are going to go, because if they go too deep, it's going to appeal to only a very select crowd. Each spell comes from a built-in variable called the self, which represents the orb that you wear around your neck. Yes. Self. To declare a see, this is actually just talking about the language of coding. You declare variables in the kind of start or awake section of your code, and then it gets called later on, or can be called later on. Go into the control section. Yeah. Drag the declare block from the toolbox. Now go to the power section. Drag the spawn orb in between there. So when the spell is cast, you declare that you want to spawn an orb. You spawn it at self. Orb. Finally, give the spell a name and icon. Orb of Magics. Close. I now have Orb of Magics. Now you can equip the spell by clicking on it and pressing Equip. Close the equip menu and then try out the spell you've made. Activate it using the key you set. So it spawns it where we are, because spawn at self. You made a spell which spawns an orb and stores it in a variable. Let's make it more useful. Click on the spell book again, click the spell, and then click the edit button. Edit. The second most important instruction, is apply aspect. This allows you to infuse an orb with power, making it deal damage, or giving it defensive properties. Yes, because at the moment it's just a little glowy light that we spawn upon ourselves. Drag the apply aspect box to just beneath the declare instruction. So we declare the variable and where we want it to spawn. Now we apply an aspect to it that means it can do something. Next, find the variable declared in the... Yes, so we need it to apply to the orb, not to ourselves. Now, whenever the given orb hits an enemy, it will do something, damage them. This is much more useful when you throw the orb. Okay, so we declare that we want to spawn an orb at us. We apply an aspect to the orb that means it will do... that it takes 2.5 mana and that it lasts rather than just disappears. And then we say, okay, we've spawned it. It's now got an aspect to it and we can throw it. Drag your variable into the first argument slots. So throw orb at mouse angle. Yes. So to summarise, you've created a spell that declares a variable, sets that variable to a newly spawned orb, applies an aspect to the orb, throws the orb in that order. Getting unstuck, you can right-click on instructions to duplicate them and get more information on their purpose. What throw actually does is set the velocity of the given orb, yeah. Okay. This... Now, I've done a little bit of coding in Unity. I'm by no means an expert. I would not even class myself as an amateur. But what is happening here feels... I'm not going to say familiar because it's not really the same. But it kind of is the same in terms of how you get actions and abilities and things like that to work in a 2D game, which is all I've tried to do. This should allow for a silly amount, assuming there are enough of these variables up here. This should allow for a ridiculous amount of customization in terms of what you can put together for these things. And that kind of stuff is normally done with a socket system or a charm system or something that modifies the code in a very select way in a game. But this seems to be giving us the ability to literally create things from scratch in a way that not even Magicka did. You know, Magicka as a game allowed you to combine different runes or elements into a spell, but it was reasonably limited in, even though it was quite freeform. This could, you know, be really, really open. I also find it quite interesting that there's no actual end aspect. Anyway, let's carry on and see how far we can go with this. Finally, here are some useful and powerful instructions that play a more supportive role. Control. if, endif, wait, break. Yes, these are all these are all C# variables, are they? Mouse pause, mouse angle, speak. So that is essentially a print to debug log style function, and you say, you know, what you wanted to say there. You've got maths, you've got logic. Yeah, these are array values, aren't they? Potentially. Again, I'm possibly using language that I don't 100% understand because I'm, as I said, an amateur at best. If true or false, yes. Okay. So anyway, now we should... Oh, we can't hit him. Why is this flashing? Spellcraft, the art and science, 3rd edition. The power of mages capture the imagination of the public for hundreds of years. Yet while what we do is called magic, the reality is that the laws of magic are well ordered and predictable, and that anyone can learn the art of spellcraft with sufficient guidance and a small amount of talent. In other words, you too can learn to code. Open your spellbook, basic spellcasting, orb aspects, drag variables. Apply aspect ignite, so now you can create a fire spell. This doesn't scroll properly with the scroll wheel. You can, oddly, scroll the code block. Spawning? Yeah. Yes, parent and child objects. I know about this. This creates an orb which travels across the screen, dropping fire orbs every 0.1 seconds. Throw my orb at angle, repeat. Declare child spawn orb at my orb. Yeah, so this spawns the orb where you are and then throws it immediately at the angle that you are pointing your mouse, and then you repeat 10 times, and as it is flying, you create a child object, which spawns an orb, which has fire, but doesn't throw, it will just drop because of the physics. Can we actually create that? Throw at mouse angle. Do we have repeats? No, we don't have repeats. Oh, and technically, if we were properly coding, we'd just be able to type it in. Soon afterwards, Alma went on a research expedition to Mir. He never returns! Days turned to weeks and months. Finally, tired of inaction from the villagers, Sadie decided to act. If no one else would look for her father, she'd venture into Mir and find him herself. I can see now why mouse and keyboard only, because all the coding stuff would get quite cumbersome with a gamepad. A pit hidden behind a bush. Okay, so sat on a bench. Probably needs an animation to go with that. Like that. Variable jump height exists. That's fine. This feels nice and fluid. I'd argue that maybe it's a little bit zoomed in. But again, it's the issue with playing a pixel art game on a 4K monitor. I like the animation that shows that those are about to drop. That is handy. Apologies if you can hear the keyboard clacking in the background. Collect. Press Alt to open the map. Okay, we've got a basic room map. No connectors on it, just blocks. Which kind of makes sense considering it's a game about coding. Oops. Didn't actually mean to fall off there, but I have, so I shall live with it. Secrets. My biggest issue in terms of the look of the game is that the pixel art is at different resolutions. For example, if you look at our character, you can see, say there at the top of the hood. I'll see if I can actually zoom this in on the footage as well. You'd say, oh, that's 1 pixel. And yet, if you look at this magic orb on her chest, 1 pixel is actually probably 25% of the size. So this is scaled at 4 times versus 1 pixel according to that scale. And then you have got the mouse cursor itself, which is also made up of pixels, which seems to be at an even finer scale. And that mismatch of scales causes essentially kind of an aesthetic dissonance for me. Some people probably don't give a damn, but I do. I'm of the opinion that pixel art should be drawn... Oh, dear Lord. Pixel art should be drawn at a specific scale, and that scale should be consistent. This is just back at the start, isn't it? Yeah, the scale of pixel art should be consistent across your game, in my opinion. Obviously, that is the opinion of one person. It is, however, one person that plays quite a lot of pixel art games. So take that as you will. It is worth perhaps a single grain of salts. Right, we just press down to fall through platforms. Oh. Likewise, the font choice is very clean, considering the chunkier nature of the pixel art elsewhere in the game. It's just... It makes me think placeholder is really what's going on here. I don't know how early the game is in development or anything. I mean, the idea of creating magic using coding elements is very cool, but again, I'm sure there are going to be ways to break it as a system. Speaking of, an entry from my father's research log. He must have come through here recently. Repeat. Repeat is one of the most useful instructions available to mages. Clever use of repeat makes available many effects which would otherwise be extremely tedious or impossible. Yeah, so repeat however many times it does, and then the thing in it. It's often useful to know which iteration of the loop the spell is currently on. There's no way to access the information directly. Instead, the best way to do is declare a variable and set it to 0 and then increment one at the end of each loop. See, this is in the beginner section, but for a complete novice to coding, this already starts to sound quite a lot. You know, when I was first looking into C# and coding in Unity, I followed a load of tutorials which all just typed out things like this, obviously in actual code. And it's like, okay, I can copy something, but do I understand how it works? This might actually help people to understand how coding works a little bit more, but it's very dense in terms of the information given. To somebody who has even less understanding of how this stuff works than me, there's not a lot of difference between them and me. I've done a little bit. This is intimidating. And as I said, I feel like this is going to be a game for a very specific type of person. So we've now got repeats set. So technically speaking, couldn't I put that in there and that? Now you can't actually tell this. Well, you can probably tell from the sound effect. There's 5 sound effects going off there because I'm throwing it 5 times. It's now costing 10 mana as well. How do we remove something? Do we just pull it out? We do. Yeah, see now it's 5. Interestingly enough, it was still hitting for 5. We should now be able to make this, shouldn't we? Not necessarily with the ignites, but if we go into this and then we... what was it? Repeat 10, declare child. I suppose child is just a variable, isn't it? So repeat 10. And then we create a child. Yes, I know it's got no corresponding statement. This is the problem with having to flip back and forth between menus. Declare, spawn orb, my orb. Again, this is where the problems come in, because you're flipping back and forth. Declare child. Declare child. Spawn orb. That's self. But every time I tab out, it resets it. So this is useless. Spawn orb, my orb. See, it just resets it. So that's no use. That's no use. If I have to tab out to look at a tutorial each time, I'm going to need a wiki open to play this. And that's not good game design. You shouldn't need... And that's what happens if you've messed up the spell. Yeah. Right, I want to apply aspects to that. It's got a highlighty thing, it seems. I can't add ignites to it, can I? Because I haven't got that yet. Unless it's... I can spell. No, haven't unlocked ignite, so we can actually get rid of that. Okay. That technically works. Oh, and I need a wait command in there because otherwise it'll spawn them all in one go, won't it? Wait goes in there. I'm going to put 2.2 in. Right, in theory... Right, I've done something wrong there because it's spawning them. It's spawning the orbs at me rather than spawning orbs at... Yes, that needs to go there. That can bugger off. This should now... Yeah, there we go. And I now see why it had... There we go. So it will do that 10 times and it will spawn orbs, which will essentially pierce through enemies. But that's taken quite a long time to put together, which will, of course, break the flow of the game. Do these actually deal damage? No, they don't. Ah, and they don't deal damage because... They act as blockers, though, but they don't deal damage because they haven't got a aspect applied to them. So I need apply aspect to there. It needs to enchant, and it needs... That's an error message, I guess. There we go. We've now got a string of enchanted orbs. Which should all do damage. They do. They use up a good chunk of mana in doing so. This thing's got health. Oh. I wonder if we'll get the ability to add different aspects from this thing. One problem with this spell is that each of the variables has got a multiplier on it, which makes it quite expensive to cast. If I can get the thing to follow us in a straight line... Yeah, I've just got to lead the shots. But the fact that it's constantly flying off the top of the screen is kind of annoying. Oh, those are shots. Should probably not stand in those. Ah. Oh. Big. Hippocrates the Immense, torturer of 1,000 men. Is that how you introduce yourself on Tinder? There we go. I win! Took a while. Unlocked instruction, orbit, so we'll get a thingy shield now. Powers, orbit around self. Makes the first orb orbit around a second orb. Orbit. Orbit is useful, though less powerful instruction could be used offensively and defensively, so you can create a kind of defensive shield of orbs. Use orbit to orbit one orb around another. Crucially, the second orb can be the self variable, which is the orb you wear around your neck. Takes two arguments, the orb that should be orbiting and the orb that should act as a pivot. So create an orb that spawns on self, give it an aspect, and then orbits us. Blank. So. How do I do this? Declare orb, spawn orb self. Yeah. And this is... It's very neat, and it's very detailed, and it is going to be too much for most people, I would think. Thanks so much for playing the demo. Fortunately, that is the end of the demo. Really cool ideas, but the interface is going to need some tweaks in order to make getting between there and here. You know, when I was coding, I had a window here with Visual Basic, or no, Visual Studio I was using, with my code that I was typing, and I had a window here with help and Firefox open with examples and tutorials and stuff, and I could just look back and forth. Having to flip between these windows, I mean, yes, this is very, very useful, and I get why it's full screen, but having to constantly go out to go and check the fundamentals in the tutorial and then close that and go back, that is unwieldy. And because you can't have them both open at the same time, you've got to essentially be a fast learner and learn how to do these things. And yes, each of these things helps in the sense that you don't need to write it out for yourself, but it's a lot. It's a lot, and it takes a brain of a certain type and a willingness to put the effort in, and this is going to appeal to an audience. This is going to appeal to a very niche audience, I would say, but it is going to appeal to an audience, and it's going to be fun for a particular audience. The problem is, I don't think that audience is necessarily going to be massive. But you might not care, and that's what that boils down to. This might be a niche game for a niche audience. It might be an experiment by the developer at making coding accessible to people. It might be used even as some kind of teaching tool. I don't know. Is this a game that I would play? Probably not. Because even though I understand some of the fundamentals of this, which is more than probably a massive percentage of the Metroidvania genre fan base, although I understand what is actually going on here to a degree, it would be a lot of effort to really play around with this and fix things. And my general experience with coding was that 85% of the time was looking at this and figuring out what I'd done wrong, versus 20% of actually playing through things and making things look pretty and so on and so forth. And that was just my experience because I didn't know what I was doing. Does this do enough to help somebody know what they are doing? Well, it depends. If they're going to have all of this stuff on a wiki page, which you can open on a second monitor, this might be a real blast to play with. But I think it's a game that's going to require 2 monitors to play. And not everybody has 2 monitors. So, or 3 monitors, or whatever. I like the idea, though. I like the premise. It's very cool. It's just going to be, I think, a lot. Let's take a look at... That's not the Steam page. Steam page! Arcane Assembly is a fantasy Metroidvania where you create spells using a visual programming language. Unlock new instructions, upgrade your powers, see, look at some of the cool stuff that can be done, and fight epic bosses on your journey to become well, technically on your journey to becoming also works, it's just slightly weirder grammar-wise. The most powerful wizard who ever lived, developed and published by Isaac Lee. I'm gonna take a guess, it's a single programmer. It's such a cool idea. No planned release date or anything yet. Fantasy Metroidvania. Create spells using visual programming language. Develop powerful spells using a visual scripting language. Hundreds of meaningfully unique spell combinations. Yeah, I mean, you would do. There would be literal hundreds of combinations that you can do with this. The only limit being how expensive that they get. Yeah, so that spawns an orb. It applies sharp. So it's still sharp damage versus an enemy. It pierces through enemies. And it's hurled at the direction of your mouse cursor, which is why there's no controller support. And it repeats 3 times, so it hits 3 times. It's not actually this. This is a lightning spell, which is dealing much more damage. Natural environments, remote jungle villages, treacherous lava caves, and the furthest reaches of the desert on your quest to gain magical power and knowledge. Unlock new instructions as you play. Each new instruction meaningfully increases the number of spells you can create to upgrade your strength and mana to defeat stronger enemies. In Arcane Assembly, knowledge and time and a wiki is probably power. I'm really impressed with that, though. I think that's a really interesting idea. It's just going to be, I think, very, very niche. That's not a critique. That is just a... I think that's probably something the developer is pretty aware of. And if they're not, they probably should have thought about that. Because not everybody wants to code to play a game. People just want to play the game. But some people, a small subset of people, are gonna have a blast with this. I don't know whether there's any actual useful feedback in this video, but it's already 40 minutes long almost. So yeah, Coding Magic Game, also called Arcane Assembly, but codingmagicgame.exe actually would also be a very entertaining title for the game, in my opinion. Thank you very much for watching, folks. Hope you have enjoyed this look at Arcane Assembly. Some really interesting ideas, but quite overwhelming for the layman. Until next time, stay safe out there and have a great day. Cheerio!
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.